sure I've hit all the buttons. Cool. Digging Deeper family, hello. It's me, Tim. It's a Wednesday. We are super excited. I have some great people on board for this week's Digging Deeper, and I'm going to mix it up. Instead of just them saying hi, I'm going to introduce who we got, and they are going to share their favorite animal. So I'm curious to hear their favorite animals. I'll start it off. Mine's an ostrich. I'm not going to give you any background info as to why. You'll have to ask. I have my great friend, Tyler Goins.
Polar bear.
Polar bear, let's go. And we have a special guest. She is very special and she is new. I'm hoping this is not her only time on the Digging Deeper, but we have Michelle Rutherford.
Hey.
Hey, and your animal?
Eagle.
An eagle. Valiant classic. Good. So, guys, I'm excited about this week's Digging Deeper. We have Michelle on this podcast because we are talking about what the Proverbs says on money. And she may not admit it, but Michelle is a wizard when it comes to managing resources, finances, wealth. So, first thing, Michelle, what do you do here at River Valley?
I am the finance director. I take care of the monies coming in, the legal parts of it going out, and making sure that we are in compliance with IRS. Just all that fun stuff and making sure that our budgets are on track and that reporting is done. So, yeah.
She signs our paychecks, too.
Yeah, she signs our paycheck. She says, yes, go ahead and make that wise purchase. Or, no, don't do that. That's not wise. And she is the reason why Student Ministries does not have a water slide park yet. But, no.
It's coming.
Redwood.
2021, we're hoping. So, all right, guys. Well, I do like to start off the show with an interesting fact. Tyler, you've been on a few times, so you've probably had to dig into the archives a little bit. But
I don't remember what I've said, but today's one. I've surfed with Francis Chan.
Surfed with Francis Chan. That'll mean something to a lot of you. Francis Chan is a very popular pastor, author. Other people may not realize that, but that's pretty cool. Yeah. Michelle?
I don't know. We maybe an interesting fact is I love roller hockey. Yeah, full contact sports. Love that. So
okay, roller hockey, different from ice hockey. So it's like you take roller derby, which I was into for a season of watching, and you take ice hockey, put them together,
and it's fun.
So you enjoy playing, watching?
No, I played.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I played. It was fun.
I could just picture you checking someone, just taking them out.
Yeah, small children too. It's crazy.
All right. No, that's fun. That's cool. Everyone has their thing. So this week, Tyler and we both got to teach. Tyler, give us a nice version of kind of what you shared, the heart behind your message.
Yeah, this week was extra long. There were 4 points instead of 3. You know, like every good Baptist pastor, usually it's 3. But today, this time was 4 points. So the blessing of wealth, the limits of wealth, the liability of wealth, and the opportunity. So the blessing of wealth is a good thing. It's a gift from God. The limits of wealth is not the most important gift from God. The liability of wealth can compromise some of those more important things. And finally, the opportunity. So bringing it full circle that we can invest in really important things in life with our wealth. Use our wealth to increase our wisdom, our integrity, our relationships, and our walk with God. So that was kind of the gist of it.
Awesome. Rogue River, I spoke on giving, which was funny because as I was writing my outline, just, kind of as a newer pastor, I'm like, those giving messages are hard because they can come off kind of strong. So I never really want to do a giving message. And I wrote my outline and I was like, this is a giving message. But so be a giver, be a responsible giver, a generous giver, a faithful giver, and a cheerful giver. And one of the things which I want to get to in a little bit, just that idea, and this was a very personal experience with me, being generous but not being an enabler. And that was just something I think I really failed at. And we'll probably talk about those two things where you can be too stingy or maybe you can be too enabling and how they're both dangerous. But quick, little interesting story. So right outside the Rogue River, we have a couple pop-ups and we do 2 services. And at the beginning of the first service, what looked like maybe a homeless person or a traveler just kind of set up shop in the tent. And
it wasn't Austin, was it?
It was not
Pretending?
Austin. Yeah, it wasn't.
No?
And so I just was like, okay, Lord, like you are bringing somebody, what seems to be maybe a homeless, needy person during this giving message. Like it made me like kind of process how I'm teaching. And no, it was not a plant or not somebody I asked to be there to test the people, but good interactions. He had a cool dog that looked like mine, so we chatted for a bit, and
Sweet.
it was good. So yeah, good messages. I don't think we got any emails.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's only Wednesday, though.
It is only Wednesday. So we're going to get started and just some good conversation. We have Michelle here, so we definitely want to pick your brain. And as we were discussing this, you brought up, because I have my thoughts when I think about money, and you brought up this idea of being content and how important that's been for you. And I think in 2020, being content has totally been trumped by coronavirus, which there's a lot in that sentence, and I apologize. But it's just, the idea of being content is probably like, I'll get to that next year. But I want to ask you how you encourage somebody, and maybe even share some of your story, how you sought contentment when life seems to be its craziest, and maybe how somebody who just seems so deep in chaos could start taking steps towards that.
So I think the thing that really spoke to me when you asked me to be part of this was that I was in a place where, I understand finances and stuff, but one of the things that really gets to us sometimes is discontentment and chaos. And when we have that comes up in our lives, we don't get to control it. We're more out of control. And the more out of control we get, the more things tend to slip and slide. And so for me, recently, my mom has had a health struggle, and it's really kind of shifted my life upside down. And for me, realizing that I'm not content. And one of the things that triggers that is my spending habits go sideways. For a lot of other reasons we don't have time to talk about. But anyway.
Next week, Michelle's spending habits.
So when I realize that is driven from a lack of contentment, I have to pull myself back. And I find that when I sit at the feet of Jesus, there is no space to be discontent.
Wow. When I sit at the feet of Jesus, there's no space to be discontent. That's a big one. I hope that's what people are taking away.
Yeah, so with all the craziness that's happening in the world today, I just encourage people to slow down and take a time to sit at the feet of Jesus, and to just be thankful for those things that you can hang on to, that you do have today in this moment. Instead of trying to look forward and what 2021 is going to look like, or what is the fall going to look like. Let's just rest in the moment that He's given us.
Wow.
And find that space of contentment, with the breath that we get to breathe, and the family we get to just invest in and be around, and how we can serve one another with what we do have.
Wow, that's huge. I think sometimes growing up, I was so focused on living to not sin that I kind of forgot to live to, I think of the word delight in Jesus, being content. I just so focused on not doing that I totally disregarded the actual importance, and that's just delighting in Jesus. So I appreciate your words on that. Tyler, any thoughts on?
Oh, I just think unplugging from the news cycle is really important for that. Like, I was just reflecting outside the other day, just looking at the mountains. We live in a beautiful area, and just thinking, if I didn't know what was going on, like, in the world and stuff, there's nothing in my life right now that is chaotic, like in my immediate world. Like, things are going really well. And I think that we can get so wrapped up in, I know that today's about money, but the bigger themes of contentment and Thanksgiving, that I just think there's so much value in unplugging from, the news cycle and, what happened today and social media. And, they've correlated time on social media inversely with your happiness. I don't know if I say that right, but, they're inversely correlated.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that for me, contentment just involves kind of unplugging a lot.
Yeah, totally agree with that. We don't watch television, so that's an easy one. But I do know that when you're going through like social media and stuff, there can be this like undercurrent of complete discontentment, and unplugging from that has just been huge, especially in this time with my mom. I don't have space for that too. So
Wow,
that's good.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I feel like you could turn off Digging Deeper now. They just dropped a couple just great sentiment and just a few thoughts. Yeah, I think I just lived in a world of chaos. It's almost this weird, because we become so familiar with it, we almost find that as our comfort zone. And I would say especially younger people, although not only younger people, don't know what life outside of chaos is. And so when you are actually in contentment, it's weird. But for me, it was a perspective change, a drastic reprioritization of my life, the things I prioritized ahead of Jesus, or what was making my life chaotic. And when it comes to my provisions, because yes, we're talking about money, but I think energy, time, I think those are equally as valuable in my opinion. And so my big hang up isn't, okay, I shouldn't say it like, oh, high and mighty. I have faith that God is going to provide. I lack faith in how I'm going to handle those and my self-control. Like, we all have our spending habits like we talked about, and stay tuned for Digging Deeper Confessions where we can talk about those. But so yeah, and kind of talking about that real quick, the idea of being a steward of what God has given us, Michelle, how do you speak to that? Like, what does it look like being a steward of the things that God has given us?
So I think and I can speak to this, I haven't been a Christian all my life, and so the way money was modeled to me, you got it, you had it, and you enjoyed it. And I think that there's truth in that, but with balance. And so when you think of being a steward, even here at the church, I am a steward of the resources that God has given the church, but it's not mine to spend the way I want to. So we, take very seriously where River Valley spends its dollars. I take very seriously now making a monthly budget and telling my money where it's going to go instead of wondering where it went. Thank you, Dave Ramsey. So I think being a steward is a shift in your mindset and realizing that money doesn't belong to you. It's a gift from God, and He's asking you to use it in ways that glorify Him. Sure, you get to experience Him, and then also share that with other people. So yeah, that to me is what it looks like to be a steward of everything. Even that includes time. God's given us, a certain amount of days, and we get to number those, and how we spend, our finances. And yeah, there's just so much that He's given to us. And when we realize that those are gifts and that we get to manage those for Him, I think it's a game changer. It was for me.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know as a steward of our resource of the church, you've had to have like some tough conversations, but I'm so thankful for those. In hindsight, just because of how honoring you are to being that steward, and then how that kind of relates to us, where we need to receive those and understand what that truly looks like. So
yeah,
you mentioned boundaries a few times in that, and so yeah, Tyler, I want to throw this one to you, and because I kind of talked about this in my message as well. But what do boundaries look like when it comes to giving our resources, time and money, to people? I think a question a lot of Christians might ask is, should I necessarily give my money to anybody who asks? Or do I not give it at all? And I think we can, in our minds, justify either way, probably incorrectly. And then, even looking at what the poor and needy that Jesus was talking about in the Bible, what that looks like to what we know as the poor and needy today. So a few things your way, but
sure,
kick us off.
So before I talk about boundaries, I think there are, and you mentioned this earlier, there are probably two temptations: either stinginess or foolishness, greed or gullibility. You use the word enabling. And I know for me, my temptation is to be more on the stinginess, greed side, whether it be time, resources, money, more protective and guarded with my resources. For you, Tim, it sounds like from your sermon, you're more on the other end of it, where you're more prone to indiscriminate giving.
Yes.
And so that was helpful for me to hear that from you, to see that, maybe our personalities lend us more to one sin or the other, stinginess or foolishness. And so I bring that up because for me, when we talk about generosity and I hear about boundaries, that becomes a loophole. Like that becomes something to hide behind. Yeah. So then I don't have to pursue the generosity that maybe God wants for me. And so I want to bring that up for those who are more like me, that boundaries doesn't mean I don't have to be generous. Wow. Or, that I can hide behind the clear commands of Jesus. But no, boundaries are important too. There's a book called When Helping Hurts. I don't know if you guys have read that one. Okay. Killer title, by the way. Yeah. When Helping Hurts. It's about short-term missions trips and how sometimes they're actually counterproductive, how they can actually hurt the community that we go in as you go on a mission trip. So one example that they use, I think, is maybe you give money to a church overseas, well intentioned, right? But then maybe that local congregation is less prone to develop their own kind of financial generosity, and every 6 months the Americans buy a new sound system and a new roof and new Bibles, and so I don't need to give. Why should I give? And so it actually robs them of the opportunity to be invested in their local church. So that would be an example of like when helping hurts.
Sure.
And I think it's similar in maybe our own situation. So wise boundaries, wisdom. One example would be like, for what you're talking about, Tim, if I'm helping somebody, if I'm giving to them and that actually harms them. So the stereotypical overused example is the addict, right?
Yeah.
If I give a drug addict money, that's not helpful. That's harmful.
Exactly.
There's probably other examples of that too. Or when giving continues a cycle of unhealthy dependence. So, there are children or maybe the mentally disabled that are going to continually be dependent on those of us that are able to help them. But other than that, there's this need to move people away from dependence. Michelle said her favorite animal was the eagle. And think of the example of the mama eagle who pushes the baby eagle out of the nest, and the baby eagle needs to learn how to fly themselves. And so if mama eagle just totally takes care of baby the whole life, the baby is never going to learn how to fly. So, kind of a cool illustration, but I think, sometimes it's hard to let people fall a little bit and maybe even let them hit the ground a few times. But anyway, those are a few things that I think of when it comes to wise boundaries. And then one more, a wise boundary, when giving is harmful to me, not inconvenient, not some sort of sacrifice. It's always inconvenient. It's always sacrifice, but when it's actually harmful. So Tim, you use the example of sharing your food at the Boys and Girls Club with the kids, and you never ate because you were always sharing your food so much.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's harmful. That's harmful to Tim's health. And so that was a good example, I think, for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or the health of others if it's Taco Bell, right?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Like, oh, I'm so kind. I just gave you Taco Bell. Well, you probably just took a month off your life. But no, yeah, those are good, Tyler. And a few thoughts. Like, I love how we see the opposite of enabling or whatever in the animal world. Giraffes do the similar thing. Baby giraffe's born. The first thing the mama giraffe does, knock it down. And it teaches how to get up quickly because they have to be able to run from predators. So seems really rude, but mama giraffe is actually saving baby giraffe's life. And I think how with enabling, I think the definition I used was like to encourage destructive behavior.
That's
and where teach, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And just we think we think we're helping, but when we're not in that person's life, like imagine if you were a house builder and people know you as a house builder, but every house you build, I actually come and help you build that house. And so one day you're on your own, like you don't know how to build a house. And just think of that. Anyways, a bunch of examples. Did you have anything, Michelle, just on that idea of boundaries or what that kind of looks like? And
I think that, and there's so many resources that are available, especially in our own area, that giving money to people who are asking for it. I actually saw a guy standing on the corner one day holding a sign up that said cocaine and hookers. I think really
creative.
It's creative, but it's also like this has become a joke.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
Wow.
And I think that you'll find that people who tend to be the most in need are the least likely to ask.
Wow.
And they will go seek out resources from other. We've got Gospel Rescue Mission, we've got Faith House, we've got so many things that are available. Even our own River Valley Benevolence Ministry, Lifeline. So there is really no reason to give directly to an individual. I highly recommend giving to organizations that are managing those resources and meeting people's needs in a direct way.
Wow. Yeah. And I that is such a good word. And yeah, I remember when it was popular where the guy had the sign that said, cut the crap, I just need a beer. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Here's money. And you're just like, all right, well, But and it's hard. Again, Jesus was very specific when he was talking about who we help, like widows and orphans. Like he actually put names to them. And so I know for me, I struggle with like that boundaries and justifying it. Like, do I give to the person on the corner with the sign when I see their iPhone charging next to them? Their shoes are nicer than mine. Like those are, I think, problems, like questions that we all ask, and I think that's why discernment and prayer is really important, because God will say, nope, give it to an organization. God might say, hey, give and have a conversation with that person and make this an interaction. So yeah, it's tough, but yeah, I appreciate that, guys. And Michelle, swinging it back to you, and thought about 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all kind of evil. I would guess that this verse has been misinterpreted, used incorrectly. So yeah, I kind of just throw the basic question out to you. Is money evil? Is money in our hands evil? What's the difference between the money and the love of money? And then even looking at Jesus's responses to people who idolize money. So go ahead and kick us off on that.
I'll just take a little quote from Mr. Dave Ramsey and say that money is not the root of all evil. The love of money definitely can be the root of evil, but money in and of itself is a tool.
Yeah.
Just like a phone, or I like his analogy of a brick. You can use a brick to build an orphanage, or you can throw it through a window. It depends on the heart of the individual who holds the money that God's given them and how they choose to use it. I think that, quite honestly, if we use our resources the way that God would have us, I mean, it would be cool to see sex traffickers not have as much in their resource bank, you know what I mean? Or drug dealers have as much in their resource bank, because God's people have chosen to be debt-free and move toward kingdom goals and change the world with their resources. So I don't believe that money is the root of all kinds of evil. However, the human heart has a tendency to maybe set it up on a throne, thinking that if I just have more, my life will be better. If I just have this new thing, my life will be better. And that takes money, right, to spend it, but we're seeking comfort in the wrong places. God is no longer on the throne. It's that thing or that more. We always want more. And my prayer is that we would want more of Jesus and the peace that he has for us, not necessarily money. And so I think that when we start to put that there and idolize it, and it's hard, again, going back to like media or social media, where things are thrown at us all day long about, how we would be better if we had this, or we would look smarter if we had that, It's super hard to get out of that culture, that mindset. And I think that's where God calls us to look different than the world. Those things shouldn't be the things that motivate us. It should be what God has for us. So it's really, I don't believe that it is the root of all evil.
Okay.
It's the human heart.
Yeah, money's not the root of all evil. It's the love of money.
Yeah.
That is a root of all kinds of evil, which is what it says. And I think, when we look at what we love, what we're most committed to, not just our preferences, but our priorities. We could see how when you prioritize money, what does Jesus say? You can't serve God and money.
Mammon.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this might be the episode for just all those cliche lines, but like, if you want to see what your idols are, just follow your wallet. And
that's really good.
Yeah, and I think you said more, and our hearts desire more, and more of Jesus is great, but more of anything else is bad. And man, doesn't our culture just feed on that? I think of phone companies not releasing the best product they have, because in 6 months after you've spent several $100s, they're going to release the new one. And shoes, like, our society thrives on that.
I think, I go back to the Genesis, right? Eve was standing in the garden and she saw that the fruit was good, and Satan's whispering these little lies to her. I mean, now it's super loud. They're not even shy about how they whisper to us anymore. But she desired more, and I think that's just part of kind of like who we are, but our desire should be more of God, more of what he has, not more of what we think he's holding out on us. I don't think we know God very well if we think he's holding out.
Right. And he's made it pretty clear that he's not. He shows all of his cards. And So, what are some examples that we see Jesus respond to? And to those who idolize money might be pretty specific, but even those who, using the word lusted or desired after money or the pursuit of that, what are some, even I'll take God or Jesus. What do you guys see? We can, start with you, Michelle, if you'd like, but if either of you have an example.
Well, I know. So the typical is the rich young ruler.
That's
God
sad.
Jesus tells him that, sell all you have, because he knows that is a chink in his armor, and that he really trusts in his resources. And he went away sad because he knew the truth of it and how hard that was going to be. So I think that, and he doesn't ask everybody to do that.
Right.
He knew this guy's heart. Right, and so he's asking him specifically. He challenged him, and it didn't sound like as he walked away he was really up for the challenge, but he was saddened by it.
I don't know why, but that story strikes differently. I get sad when I hear that one. Like, we hear all these other stories, but that one, I don't know if it's just so relatable. But yeah, I think of Jesus says, all right, like, honor me with your actions. Check, you've done good. Trust me with your possessions. And that's what turns him away, or selling your possessions and not needing them. And so, yeah, that one just strikes differently for some reason.
A lot of Jesus's fighting with the Pharisees has the backdrop of their love of money. So it says in Luke 16:14, the Pharisees who loved money heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. And so, a lot of the religious hypocrisy that the Pharisees demonstrate is undergirded by a love for money, and that impacts the way they treat other people. And so I think that's important to realize that a lot, you might know this, Michelle, like, I think Jesus talked more on money than on heaven or hell or all. Money is one of his central topics. And so it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, second to love, I understand.
Oh, okay.
Because he spoke more about money and possessions, second to love.
Wow.
Good priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that seems so fitting that's the ranking of those, that love, and then, yeah.
And love of money is an iteration of love, right? That's a bad
Certainly.
one.
It's
But
Yeah,
not healthy.
that's great.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think the next few things I want to talk about, I'm not going to say they're like sensitive subjects, but I think they're things that we all kind of have opinions on. And so, yeah, kind of first one I want to throw your way, what giving looks like today. And a few terms I'm going to throw out, like faithful giving versus, I don't know if the word's ignorant giving or unhealthy giving. Like, what's the difference between faithfully giving? And then, like, I want to talk about tithing and the tithing principle. A tenth of your wages would go to the church or the ministry. Kind of want to hear the origins of that, where it came from. And then, I have another question, but we're going to get to that after this one.
Yeah.
So, start off
I
with
like
that.
the word generosity better than giving. I think we talked about this
Yeah.
a few weeks ago. To me, the word generosity seems more holistic and more of from your heart, where giving could just be what you legalistically do to do the checklist, or like, oh man, I gotta write my check, or whatever. They're after my money again, and so I think a faithful giver is one who does it from a heart of generosity. God loves a cheerful giver, he says in 1 Corinthians, I believe, or maybe 2 Corinthians. But in terms of the tithe, definitely a big topic.
Yeah.
The tithe, it's a word that means tenth. It comes out of the Old Testament. But I think people don't really understand what even the Old Testament tithe was about. So there wasn't just one 10% tithe. There's actually three. And so your first tithe would be towards the Levites. So that would be the priests, the church leaders, or not church, but synagogue, tabernacle, temple leaders. You tithe to them because their full-time job was in the tent, doing the religious activities. Then the second one, you guys are going to love this. This was a yearly blowout barbecue that you would set aside money for.
Sign me up.
Yeah. 10% of your income. Can you imagine blowing 10% on a yearly party?
What a block party that had to be.
And it's both a party and a family vacation. So you would travel to Jerusalem, and it's both religious and vacation. So you go to Jerusalem to celebrate this party. You can read about it in Deuteronomy 14. But really cool. And you would set aside money for meat, for beer, for all sorts of fun stuff like that. And if you live too far away, you'd cash your crops and go and then just splurge. And it's just this idea of, hey, celebration, enjoy what God's given you with your family, budget for that vacation. Pretty cool. So those are the first two. And the last tithe was only every 3 years, and that would be for the poor and needy.
Wow.
You set aside another 10%. So if you calculate all this up, it's about 23% of your income.
Okay.
So that the Old Testament's tithe is a lot more than your 10% tithe that we talk about today. Anyway, all that to say, I usually take those 3 tithes and tie that into what our generosity should look like today.
Wow.
Nowhere in the New Testament does it say you have to give 10%. Jesus talks about the tithe sometimes kind of negatively, like, hey, you guys tithe a tenth of your garden. Good job, but you've neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and these kinds of things. So he's like, you should have done those things and the other things. So usually when I talk to people about the tithe today, it's like, hey, this is a great principle. This is a great place to start, but it's the New Testament actually goes a step further. It's like our whole, like everything we are belongs to him.
Mm-hmm.
We are stewards or managers. It's all his. And then from there, we're responsible for how we spend and use all of it. So yes, the tithe, we can't legalistically apply it to our own situation today. And when I heard that as a young kid, I was such a punk about it. Oh, I don't need a tithe anymore. Like, awesome.
Right.
And what redeemed the tithe for me, what brought it back and why I think it's still important is that just some simple math. Those who tithe give more than those who don't.
Wow.
So, I mean, simple math.
Oh, yeah.
So like those who, and statistics. So those who don't tithe give about 2% of their income, Christians.
Okay.
Those who do give at least 10%. And so if I want to invest, if I want to store up treasures in heaven, the best way to do that, just like any investment or saving or putting down debt, getting it away, is incremental, consistent payments to that. And so I'm like, well, I want to give as much as I possibly can to God's kingdom. And the best way to do that is to set down a particular percentage. 10% is nice because it's easy math-wise, right? You just move the decimal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be 10%. So I encourage people to start with a percentage. Say, Lord, I want to be faithful. Sit down with your budget. Hopefully you have one. And say, Lord, I want to be faithful with a certain percentage. Maybe it's 5%. Maybe it's 10%. For Rick Warren, it's 90%.
Yes.
You know, and some people can. And there's probably retired people in our church that could do 30, 40, 50%. Not just to River Valley, but I mean just to hey, where does God want this to go?
Yeah.
And then last thing on this, so you take your percentage. Maybe you feel like between you and the Lord and your budget and your spouse, hey, 10% or 15% or 5%. And then from there, I like to split that up and go, okay, I'm going to spend the majority to my local church, and then I'm going to support an organization that means something to me.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to set aside 1%, 2%, maybe $20 a month, whatever, to just spontaneously help those around me.
Okay.
So there's a couple ways that I've thought about it. Kind of a long answer, but
No, I appreciate that. And then obviously $100 a month to that party that we're talking.
let's
No.
go. No, but seriously, like you guys are so hospitable, Tim and the Sorensens, and like, not that I'm saying like work that into your tithe, but I think that's important when we think about generosity. Is like hosting people in our home and hospitality and celebration. Like these things are important.
Yeah, it's just, it's so fun. And you said so many good things. And I think that give and that generosity, that comparison, like I give to the IRS. Like I think, I don't think I have to be cheerful in that, but I think I have to be respectful and honoring. But just, we'll talk about this a little later because I want to hear your thoughts on all that, Michelle. But like, we want to be generous with what the Lord has given us. And like, we should be, quite frankly, because of what was given to us.
Amen,
and like what he gave to us. And I think that's so important. So I think it's a good, hey, if you are not like generous and cheerful in this, like ask yourself why. And those might be some hard questions.
Yes.
What are we holding on to too much, or what don't we understand about Jesus's role in our life? And so, Michelle, I don't know if you had any thoughts onto some of those questions. And
Well, I was thinking that, like, unlike Tyler, where he tends to want to hold on to things, you and I
Yes.
have this kind of spirit of generosity, and it's easy for me to just like give till it hurts, right?
wow.
And so one of the things that has been helpful for me in that is actually running with a budget.
Yeah.
And seeing that even with a budget, because I've set aside money in different places, now I have more money than I had when I wasn't budgeting, right?
Yeah.
And so it allows me to be even more generous, which is something that I dig being able to do. You know, if somebody needs help, I can actually help them out. And so there is obviously two different mindsets: a mindset of scarcity, where you kind of hang on to things a little bit more, and then an open-handed kind of thing. if it's not managed properly, with the right heart, or, being aware of what God's asking you to do and trusting in him for that, it can move you in negative directions, but the hope would be a positive direction.
Right.
I know a friend of mine recently shared with me that somebody had explained the whole tithe to her, and the idea was that it's a whole piece of pie, a whole pie, right? And you're asked to give out, like 10% of it. And it's not because God needs your money, because come on, let's get real. He doesn't. He's
Right.
asking for your heart.
Wow.
And if you can just give that little 10% piece of that pie, you get to keep the whole rest of it,
Wow.
And so it's not a lot, and it's not for us. It's not for God. Like we owe him something. We owe him so much more than 10%.
Right, yeah.
It's amazing. So to be able to be generous to help those that are in need, and that God brings us to, because we were good stewards and managers with his resources, I think that's how we look different in the world.
Wow.
I remember a couple years ago, I had gotten a raise, and so I was adjusting, what I felt like I needed to be giving in generosity. And I didn't want to. I resented it because that number looked bigger. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, that's a lot of money. But then I just had this thought, is like, am I someone that God can trust with his resources?
Wow.
Like, am I like, and it reminded me of the funny illustration of the guy who goes to the pastor and says, Pastor, I just having this problem. I feel like I make too much to give 10%.
Yeah.
And the pastor said, all right, brother, let's pray. I'm like, Lord, we pray you would drastically reduce this brother's salary so he can be faithful to you in the little things. And I was just like, Lord, am I, if I was Rick Warren and I had 90% to tithe, like,
Wow.
can you trust me with that? I don't think I'm there yet, so it's training wheels.
No, that's all good stuff. And I think what you guys said is really good, because a lot of us can view tithing as like the legalistic principle. And I think that 10% is it's a good guide. Maybe it's a good start to like,
Totally.
okay, where are we at? Can we do this? Can we do more? Can we do less? But then also, it's like tithing is not just giving your money to a building with 4 walls. It is possibly, the possibilities are endless to what the Lord can do. It is just vital that we are having those conversations with him, with our spouse, all three together. Hopefully that's kind of some freedom for some listeners. But on the other side, giving 10% of my income to Taco Bell is not, I am not giving to those employees and providing for them. That would be a bad loophole to go down. So
True.
That's funny.
I do want to ask like a very vague general question, because this might be like too sensitive one, but so just in the most broad spectrum, are your guys' spouses, are their views on money like coming into the marriage, was it similar to yours, or were you guys pretty different? And you can just yes or no that. I think it's kind of, because I think I'd shared earlier, my wife and I, very different. She was frugal, she was wise. I had to learn some things. So, I don't know if you guys want to answer that or you want to pass, but
No, so we've almost been married 3 months, so we have it all figured out. But no, we haven't even got our budget squared away. Like, that's on our list. Hopefully Friday, because we both have Friday off. So just getting on the same page about certain things. But we are both a little more frugal and kind of in that same place together. But talking about combining finances and bank accounts, and it's a little bit of a headache, but it's important.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that when I got married almost 25 years ago, I was a completely different person, so it's not a fair question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah.
That's good though.
I just feel like I personally have learned so much, and for the good. So I'm so thankful the Lord did not match me with somebody like me, but somebody that was able to. And I think we've helped each other out. But
Totally.
okay, so maybe sensitive topic number 2. So we talked about tithing and giving, and a kind of something that is very relevant in today's culture is that idea of debt. And so, Michelle, swinging this one to you. I'm excited. I don't know if scared's the right word, but just ready to learn, possibly. The simple question: is there such thing as good debt? And when I think of debt, I think of probably the big 3: home loans, credit card, school loans. So, is there such thing? And then, are we in sin if we have loans? So, some heavy questions.
The idea of credit is something that's still fairly new, It's
True.
not something that's been around for a long time. The idea of being in debt or owing somebody some money because you weren't able to do it on your own used to be frowned upon. And today, debt is so ingrained in our culture that most people can't even envision like a car without a car payment, a student without a loan, a house without a mortgage. So I think that it's a progression. It used to be that when a couple got married, Tyler and Karina got married, and they would save for a house, and they would be able to put down a large chunk of dollars on it before they moved into it. A lot of young people today, myself included, I want what my parents had, right? Not realizing that it took them a long time to get there. And we're more about instant gratification, the idea of doing things slowly, methodically, and carefully, and waiting for that result just doesn't really exist anymore. So I think that I don't own a credit card. It's just not a way I operate. I live within my means. If there's something that I want, I budget for it, and it goes into a little savings fund, and I get it when I get it, you know. So I think that there's value in that. Student debt is at an all-time high. A lot of kids are graduating, or if they are graduating from where they started, with millions of dollars in debt. And that is funded through government, obviously. Those are and they're non-forgivable loans unless you get in some really cool way. Some people have. But that's a lot of problem. And there's a lot of ways around it. But we don't know to ask the question because it's so ingrained in our culture.
Yeah.
So is debt a sin? I would like to say no, but I would say that, again, it comes back to the matter of the heart. Am I getting something because I want it, and I want it now, like a terrible 2-year-old with a tantrum? and I tend to be that way, so I'm just telling you how it is for me.
Yeah.
But I know that in other cases, like if you want to buy a home and you've done your due diligence, you realize what you can afford, you've saved up some dollars, and you're really going about it in the right way, your financing is coming through. I don't think there's any harm in that, but realize that your liquid resources have just been reduced. So how much more can you give to the kingdom of God when you're saddled with debt?
Wow,
Right.
that's a good question.
Yeah, if the people of the kingdom were living debt-free, how much more could we change the world with the resources that God's given us, just with what the debt that we have, right? So I don't believe that living in debt is a sin. I believe that it is if the heart of the person is in the wrong place. If I'm getting a new Jaguar because I want a new Jaguar, where my little Toyota will get me there and back, again, it's what has got our attention, our affection.
And sin feels like the wrong category to me. It's almost foolishness.
Yeah.
Now, foolishness can be sin.
Yeah.
But, I think Dave Ramsey recommends reasonable house debt and reasonable school loans, student loans. Key on reasonable.
Yeah.
And then one more came to mind. I was just thinking of people who've been in medical debt for things outside of their control.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's good to be as prepared as possible for those kinds of things, but you can't help it. If you need to, you need the medical procedure or whatever, you have kids and, the pregnancy doesn't go super well. There are, lots of situations like that. But in general, I think debt is foolish, particularly any kind of debt outside of those three. Credit card debt, leasing things, massive mortgage payments that are, outside of your means. These are massively destructive even. I think of the ministry majors at our Christian schools that at my Christian college, and how they got saddled with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of debt, and then they go into low-paying ministry or missionary jobs, and it totally hamstrings them.
Yeah, and what you're saying, I mean, somebody coming out with $40,000 to some would love to only have that, and it's really, it's really sad. And what you were saying, Michelle, like if we did the whole like live inside our means and the idea of loans and debt wasn't a thing, like our culture literally couldn't exist. Like if we just said, hey, we're starting this in 2021, no debt, like none of that is available, we would like our culture wouldn't know what to do. And I think of I agree. Sin is a little strong of a word, but like that foolishness, it's like lobby you're sitting in before you decide to go into the door of sin, where you're on track. So just be careful. And unfortunately, I think a lot of young people, that idea of keeping up with the Joneses. So you are going to buy the brand new car that you don't need because of opinions. And as for me, now, luckily, it wasn't necessarily going into debt because I did have some saved up, but I blew money a lot faster because I was prideful and didn't want to stay at home and go to local RCC. So instead, I went to this literally a community college. It was a junior college away, spent more money on housing and probably created some bad habits with eating and like just spent so much more because of pride. And just like, I can't be where Rachel did her 2 years at RCC, saved thousands of dollars, went into her third year without having to do any student loans and ended up, just, it was a lot better. So I just think of that, like that pride, and everything you guys have said has been great. And it just comes back to that discernment and seeking God's wisdom. And if we're making financial decisions without taking it to the Lord, how dangerous and foolish that can be.
I think a lot of people with debt just don't know. They don't know the costs of paying the minimum on your credit card every month, or leasing the boat, or leasing this car. Like, I think when people are educated, they realize, oh my goodness, look at all this money that I've spent on this thing. You know?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was a learning process for me, going through, whether it's car loans or credit card loans, any kind of
pretty much.
Yeah, like debt like that, and then not realizing I'll tell you a quick story. I bought a refrigerator. It was a $600 refrigerator from Circuit City way back in the day. I paid the minimum payment on that, and at the end of the day, I had the thing for like 6 years. Still owed the same balance on it, plus some, because I wasn't really savvy with making payments on time. This little $600 refrigerator cost me thousands, but I didn't realize it.
You didn't know. Yeah.
I didn't know any better. And so education is key, right?
Man,
no, that's good.
That's scary, because then you apply that same idea to that same thing is probably happening with our student loans, and it's just not a $600 fridge. Wow, that is a crazy story.
One more thing on that. I think Pastor Mark in his sermon mentioned that debt is bad if you're paying more than what the thing is worth.
Right.
So, like, when you calculate it out, it's like, oh, wow, I spent $10,000 on this refrigerator. Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Like when you spread it out. When you do it with your house, you're like, wow, that's a big number, but it's a house. Like, okay. But I think that's a good way to look at it. Just be fully informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and education is key, and it's scary, especially. I mean, so it sounds like, and I call you a wise wizard. That just didn't get dumped on you. You had experiences. You learned from the good and the bad, and I think sometimes for me, even going down that alley is hard because you just like, I know I'm not good at this. I'm gonna have to address some real foolish moves I've made, but in the end, it's totally good. So
that's good.
Man, I have loved every part of this conversation. We got just a few left, but they're more of the, kind of getting down to the end. We talked about giving our money to, like you said, you would rather give it to an organization than an individual. So I want to take this opportunity to highlight a few ministries or organizations that are on your guys' heart that listeners might not even know exists, that probably need help more than ever during the time of COVID. Do you guys have any ministries or organizations that you guys would encourage people to look into supporting financially or even volunteering with time? I mean,
one thing for an immediate need, if you attend River Valley this upcoming weekend, Lifeline has asked for quarters because lots of people, change is really hard to find right now. And if you go to a laundromat and you don't have change, it's a lot more difficult, especially if you're, struggling a little bit. So, very practical thing. Hey, bring some quarters on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, and
put them in the offering basket.
Yeah, and if you're thinking, well, I have a bag of quarters, well, that would be weird. Or
not at all.
Please bring quarters. That'd be really cool.
Just don't do it with trumpets.
Right, yeah.
In the Bible,
don't wear a robe. Don't do trumpets. Just bring a bag of quarters. Say, hey, the guys on Digging Deeper said to do this. So cool. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, Gospel Rescue Mission is a great organization to help folks get a meal, get a shower, with some counseling. Our own Lifeline does a
Yes.
great job with
Yes, they
just
do.
talking with people, praying with people, and helping to meet their needs spiritually and materially. They do a great job there, and so I can't advocate for them enough.
Oh man.
Yeah, they're great down there. So
Yeah, I've seen just the hearts that those people have. I've seen one of the people that helps with Lifeline. She, Lifeline's from like 9 to 2, and I saw her in the morning working on a lady's car. I saw her at 5 in the evening working on that same car, just elbows in the engine. And then the next day I saw some Lifeline workers still working on that car. So it's like they're in it, just their passion is there. Such a cool resource, Lifeline. Working with youth, obviously, Joe's Place is an organization here in Grants Pass, and I believe they're out there in Cave Junction, just working with youth that don't have a place to go, troubled youth. They just do so much. They provide a meal. They provide a place, especially in the winter. Just come, hang out. They are people that love Jesus dearly, and using those opportunities just to create relationships over meals, which I think is one of the most effective things to do, is like, here's a meal. Let's just talk. And so Joe's Place, Darren Williams over there is just super cool. And so many more, but I think those are, Lifeline obviously was one that was on my list. So, okay, we're going to the keep digging. Now, you guys have both thrown out some things. I think I'm guessing another reference to financial peace, but the part of the show where we want to offer a resource that people could continue to look up. So a class, a podcast, a book, a sermon, etc., that we would encourage the listeners to pursue after this podcast.
So Financial Peace University.
This is your time. Let's go. Drop it on us.
Coming in the winter time, we like to do that after Christmas season, so y'all can get it out of your system.
Recover.
Yeah, we call it a recovery period. So look for that coming in January. I myself am a financial consultant. I help with people with their budgets. I help people get their debts figured out. So I've taken a course, and that's what I do.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's one other book that I would like to recommend, and it's by Amy Streeter, and it's God's Money, Your Money, God's Way. And it is a great, simple read, and she's pretty heavy hitting, and good stuff from her, definitely. And obviously anything by Dave Ramsey's podcasts and stuff.
Cool.
That's good.
Yeah, I follow the Dave Ramsey feed on Instagram, and convicting sometimes. You scroll faster but it sits in there, and you realize that there's a lot of truth to it. So cool, awesome. I appreciate that.
A couple years ago, our church went through the book "The Treasure Principle" by Randy Alcorn, and it's really small. It's our kind of book, Tim.
Yeah.
It's a 70-page book, and it's really good. Real briefly, Randy Alcorn's story. He was peacefully protesting in front of an abortion clinic many years ago, and got really sued, just massively sued.
Really sued.
And one of the and the judge was more left leaning, and just really threw the book at him. And millions of dollars that he had to pay to the abortion industry.
Wow.
And he refused to do it. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to take your paycheck. We're going to garnish your pay, and you're going to, but he just, in his heart, he could not send any money to that organization. And so he quit his job and started work. And the only loophole out of getting your wages garnished is you have to work a minimum wage job, and then they can't take your money. So his wife was working full time. He's working minimum wage, and then all his book proceeds he would give away. So he had this unique story where he could not hold on to that much money.
Wow.
Because it would go to where he didn't want it to go. And so all his money, him and his wife gave millions of dollars away.
Wow.
And just recently, the case was dismissed or something like that. It was the years were up. But and so anyway, this guy has a leg to stand on giving, and a real unique story for him. But it's a cool book.
Wow, that's super cool. Okay, great resources. And then, even just the book, When Helping Hurts, that Tyler mentioned earlier, could be a good one just as far as our time or where we're putting things. Great resources. Guys, I appreciate it. I was super excited about this podcast, and that was validated after this conversation. So any final thoughts, words, or?
No, thanks, Tim.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And catch us next week. We're excited to continue through Proverbs. So until then, see you later, guys.